So we're going to talk about event marketing, which I know is part of the mix for so many of you, and certainly something that I personally spend a lot of time on. So I looked into it, and some of the reports from Cvent say that about 72% of marketers say that events are one of their most effective marketing tools, and for offline events, they talk about those as revenue generators, right? Like leading directly to revenue from the in-person events. Whereas online events, I think it said, or I'm looking for the number here, 66% said that online events outperform every other channel in terms of delivering leads. So I think there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of value for our various organizations. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you all approach events and why. So let's start with introductions. We're going to go straight down the line with introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your role today.
Great.
Ted?
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for having us. And hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Ted Birkhahn. I'm a managing director at Vested. I've been in the marketing and communication space for about 30 years, which it's difficult for me to say that, but I'm working on it. And for most of that time, I worked on the agency side, working with financial brands. So events have always been a huge part of the repertoire. And I think, mostly in the early part of my career, physical events, COVID hits, ton of online, but all events are back now. I mean, I've never seen such surging demand for events and event marketing like I have in my entire career, both digital and in person. So very excited to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacquelyn Reardon. I am with Franklin Templeton. I lead our U.S. marketing organization and also have responsibility for our global private markets marketing effort. I have been in the financial services organization for my whole career as well. I used to say the first half, but I think the balance doesn't have, so I should say early in my career, like you mentioned.
Just 30 years.
Yeah. The first third was in sales, and then I made the transition over to marketing. So if I think about the last 20 plus years and the evolution of events and the way that we engage, for us financial advisors who are really our primary client and our direct contacts, the way that we have engaged with them over the last couple decades has absolutely shifted and changed. And I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but I do think the expectation as well, since all of us have so much data on our clients, is that we really leverage that data and target them and give them the types of experience that we know they'll be most relevant to them. So excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. Steven?
Hi, everyone. My name is Steven Lechner. I'm the creative director for Money 2020 USA, which is in Las Vegas every October. It is one of our largest events at Money 2020, which brings together the entire financial ecosystem. So the experience design team at Money 2020, it really covers everything both digitally and in person to create that holistic customer journey. So everything from show floor plans to our stages and activations and the experience at Money 2020. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as you can see, we picked panelists who take a really different approach to events and kind of mix them into their marketing mix in a little bit different ways. But research shows that people who find an event to be memorable are significantly more likely to convert. So tell me a little bit about how you make something memorable, but also still tied and still rooted in the message or the brand that you are trying to communicate about. Let's start with you, Ted.
Okay, great. It all starts with the audience. I mean, I think we preach, you have to ruthlessly get to know who that audience is going to be in the room or on the webinar, what their needs are, why should they care about it in the first place, what are they going to get out of it, and will they come back for more? Often sort of judge performance of events by would they come the next time? Did they get out of it? So it starts with the audience. It starts with understanding what their needs are, and then how can we tie what we're planning to deliver to them that works for the brand, that reinforces the key messages, the key positioning, or whatever goals you want to get out of it, whether it's awareness building, lead generation, et cetera, but it never sacrifices the needs of the audiences. And I think that's where a lot of brands do run into trouble at times. But if you can sort of make sure that you're always serving the audience's needs first and foremost, that's generally speaking what makes for great events.
I would just double down on that too. I think in our industry and maybe other industries too, but this is my only experience. Sometimes we have this sort of gut reaction or this compulsion to talk about us and how great we are, and oh man, someone's going to want to come to this event because we're going to want to hear about how great we are, how long we've been in business, all these great things that we have to offer from an investment standpoint. And it's just not the case. Particularly in our industry, it's so competitive. There's been so much consolidation, and there's bigger players, and there's fewer at the table, and we really have to figure out what our hook is and how to be competitive and stand out. And as you mentioned too, for us to be super grounded in what's the value that we're actually providing the audience, doesn't actually matter in a lot of ways. The icing on the cake is the way that you bring that forward, whether that's virtual or in person. There's so many amazing ways you can bring that forward, but if you don't start with what's the value that the audience is going to get out of this, hopefully they come away with it feeling really good about our brand and what we have to offer as well, but it has to be really grounded in the value and hopefully a differentiated value than some of our competitors.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's keeping creativity at the heart of what we do. And it's going that extra step of whatever the customer touch point is, from our registration team to our content teams to our stages and experience. It's what value are we providing the customer? How are we serving that customer? Almost stepping away, getting outside of yourself. The customer's already at your event at that point, right? When they show up. So it's less about how can we wow them with our brand and how can we serve them. I think keeping that at the heart of everything we do. I agree wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. So keeping the audience right at the heart of every single touch point sounds like we're all in agreement there. So Jackie, you all spend a lot of time and effort creating events to engage your clients, your advisors. Designing a high value event is hard work, but also figuring out how to decide, was that a successful event? What are you looking for beyond just attendance numbers? What would you say makes an event great in your team's mind when you're finished with it?
I think it's difficult, but I think today all of us have access to so much data, and I think we're having a lot of conversations. I think for as many events as everyone goes to from a marketing perspective, that ROI topic comes up and is on the agenda quite a bit, because I think we're being held accountable to that ROI piece. How do we explain the value of marketing? How do we explain how marketing's contributed to some part of the sales funnel? So I think that's both a challenge and an opportunity for us to use the great data that we have available to us. I think besides okay, we invited X amount of people and these amount of people came, actually getting real feedback, not just afterwards, but throughout as well. And then I think what we've tried to do in certain situations is also use that data to track afterwards. What did sales look like? What did follow-up activity look like? How have we been able to extend out that journey? We were just chatting a little bit before. Events can sometimes be a flash in the pan, a point in time. So what are the things that we have available to us to really continue that conversation? If this person came to an event, we offered this lead to the salesperson, were they able to engage? Were we also able to package in some sort of other value? And then from there, what did the journey look like? Was there additional engagements? Was there a portfolio manager pulled in? Was there a cross-sell that happened? Was there AUM or retention, whatever the ultimate goal was? I think it's just really behooves us to use the data that we all are very lucky to have available to us in our day and age to set up front what those goals are and then track it afterwards.
As a follow-up to that, I'm curious, do you look at an event maybe further out? So, you look at it directly afterwards and you say, okay, it was good, it was successful, we had this many attendees, et cetera. But if you're trying to track it back to a sale, I would think that you might look at an event 3 or 4 months later and say, actually, that event was really successful. Even at the time, it just looked okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where a dashboard comes into play and a postmortem. And I think one of my event colleagues is here who's fantastic. And in a lot of ways, her team will bring together folks beforehand, afterwards. What's the internal feedback? So from if you were the salesperson that was there at the booth talking to people, what did you think? What did you gain from it? What's your feedback on how it could have been better, how you could have engaged more people? But then, yeah, for sure, let's check that 3 months, 6 months. Let's definitely, if we're it's a repeatable thing as well, like maybe it's a conference that we, the contract's up for renewal and we're gonna decide whether or not we're gonna spend that money again. Let's go back and figure out if we can definitely prove that 100K, 200K was worth the investment because we feel really confident based on those numbers that data came back. So I think it's an ongoing behavior. It's almost like a muscle you have to work on consistently to make sure you're asking yourself those questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Stephen, you talked about serving the audience, and you have a really interesting challenge. So I've been to Money 2020 a couple times, and it's a great show. I enjoy it. But you have an interesting challenge because you have so many different audiences there. People who are sponsors, people who are speakers, people who are there to make a deal. You have a lot of different audiences that you're serving, from the largest financial institutions down to the very smallest ones and media organizations. How do you make sure that you are serving and creating something that really meets the needs of such a diverse set of people?
Yeah, so for the Money 2020 experience team, we have a simple framework. We keep it pretty simple, actually. That's kind of 6 steps. Of the first one is the intrigue. So how are we building that anticipation for that arrival moment? And then number 2 is arrival. How do we immerse them into our world? For Money 2020, our entrance is a huge feature of our show, and it becomes one of our biggest photo social share moments. 3 is participation. So how are we inviting them to participate and discover our show? Forced discovery. Building the areas of discovery that they can interact and discover, and inviting them along on that journey. And then 5 is the exit. What is the landing point once they exit that show to land on familiar ground? And then 6 is extend. How are we extending that far beyond once they leave to when they go home? How are they enriching the ecosystem? How are we keeping those conversations going?
Okay, I love the checklist.
Yeah.
That in my arsenal.
Just by following that, it's kind of guides how we structure each stage, each activation, each moment of our show.
Okay, I like that. It's a good mental framework for me too. So I'm gonna steal it. So Ted, you're working with a variety of clients who kind of are using events for really different purposes. So tell us about some that have been pretty successful, or kind of what they're trying to drive through their events as they approach them.
Yeah, I mean, clients use events as a marketing channel for different purposes, right? So it all comes back to the goals of each event. I will say some of the more successful events I've seen are sort of indicative of a few things. One is the partners that they bring into the event. And as much as our clients and all brands want to feel like they're a big draw, sometimes they're not, and they have to be honest with themselves. And so sometimes they have to partner with third parties that do bring more notoriety and just a bigger digital footprint that helps to attract an audience that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do on their own. So finding the right partner is critical, but also finding the right people to sit on a panel that are going to gel and complement each other is also, and hopefully this is not one of them, but we've all been had discussions where it's just awkward, right? Like there's not a real flow to the conversation, whether it's because of the moderator or because of the folks that are on the stage. And it really has a huge impact. Even if you have great content to share, it has a huge impact on the experience that the audience has. So finding that right balance is really critical. So doing the homework up front to say who's going to work together well to convey the story that we want to convey is really important. And the other thing I would just say that's really critical is preparing the panelist. And so we do a lot of work with our client spokespeople to ensure, similar to a media interview, this is a live forum. This is a live setting. Anything that I say or that anyone says in this panel can go out into the world. I know you're all eagerly live blogging as we speak, but a lot of our clients speak at the Money 2020s of the world. Huge platforms, lots of media in the audience. And so we want to make sure that they're on message, but at the same time, they're really compelling storytellers. So, those that are too conservative and too concerned about what to say don't make for good panelists at an event. Those that say too much create problems. It's the stories, though, great storytellers. So not just coming up with the right key messages, but what are the stories behind that that really makes or breaks a panel, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Ted, you take preparedness pretty seriously because you sound very prepared for someone who has known he's going to be on this panel for less than 24 hours.
I crashed course. she was great at preparing me, so all the credit goes to Ashley.
No, it's true. I think like the chemistry of any, especially if you're doing a panel, like having people talk to each other beforehand and find points of connection and points where they're going to have differences and things like that. I think that's kind of what makes the magic on stage a lot of the times. So Jackie, let's talk a little about in-person versus virtual, how you use those as sort of your part of your overall strategy and when you insert each. I mean, you know, how do you see those as each as individual or maybe interchangeable?
Yeah. Well, I do think as a whole, events are definitely their own channel, and we should definitely think about them in coordination with the many other marketing channels that we have access to. Sort of think about events in three buckets. There's the third-party events, like the big industry conferences that really make sense for us to be at, like a Future Proof or a Napa, where it's a great brand building opportunity, great connection with like key audiences. Then there's the bespoke hosted events, which Maggie and her team are phenomenal at, where we have the opportunity to host ourselves and control the agenda and control the experience. And usually I see those as being the most successful when they're extremely curated. It's a smaller group of people. It's like an advisory council, like where you're really pulling in the top clients versus a third-party event. You don't always have control over who's there, and you kind of hope for the best and you kind of review. So from an in-person standpoint, I think those are phenomenal from, again, brand building, in-person connections, networking, adding value, controlling the agenda, all of that. Those obviously take a lot of time and effort and money. They're expensive, so it has to be something that's super thought out. And again, what I mentioned earlier about measuring, really have to make sure that you have a compelling case to go back again or do bigger or do more. They really have to be aligned with your priorities, but it gives you a really, really great opportunity to get real-time feedback, hear from people in person. Where I think virtual really makes sense, and you know, admittedly, people always laugh when they mention webinars to me because I sometimes roll my eyes, just because I think sometimes we've overdone webinars and we can get to a place where there's too many of them and we're kind of just like always there, always on. I think webinars are super compelling, and where virtual really comes into play is when there's something that is super timely. So I think about a rapid response, like knock on wood, this doesn't happen, but something happens tomorrow in the market. The stock market decreases significantly, or we have some sort of geopolitical event that happens. And as an asset manager, I think one of our key priorities, besides offering best-in-class investment solutions, is to be there with market insights. So for us to be out first, or one of the first, to have some way for our advisor community to make sense of what happened so they can in turn quickly turn to their clients and add value themselves. That, I think, is where virtual events really shine. Not to say that's the only time we should do them. Sometimes it's a much easier way to bring together key thought leaders. It can also be a good engagement opportunity if you have the right platform, and it can also be a good opportunity to extend out content with clips and videos and things like that. But I do think virtual really, really shines when you're able to be first to market with something market-driven.
Absolutely. Ted, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the speed is essential in today's day and age. Yes, you want to be right and you want to be accurate, you want to be compelling, but if you're not first to market, then you might not want to even do it at all.
Exactly.
So totally agree. That's obviously where the digital realm comes into play. The other thing I would just say from a virtual versus in-person event, our clients, like everyone in this room, are really busy. And so it's sometimes really hard to get an executive on a plane halfway across the country or the world in a room to do an in-person event, but they have great knowledge, great things to say, great things to share. So I don't want to just lose that because their calendar doesn't allow for it. So let's do it digitally. We do it from wherever that executive is and get them the right platform to deliver the right message. I would much rather that. So I do think that's where digital comes into play. And I've seen a lot of clients lean in that direction just because there's a few key marquee events that they go to every year, and that's it. Money 2020 being one of them, but that's it. And then the rest is online because they just absolutely don't have capacity in the calendar to do it otherwise.
Absolutely. And I promise Money 2020 didn't pay us a month edge. They just offered us Steven. So, let's talk about, enabling events. So there's a study out from Splash Events that said 77% of marketers say they would actually do more events if technology sort of enabled them more. And I think technology is ever evolving in our profession, right? And I can say from our own point of view, the technology that we have in place to host events really does, it's game changing for us, right? Like when we first put Goldcast in place instead of Zoom webinars, for us, it changed what we were able to do online. But even the logistics of an event, like sitting all these people in the room, it takes a lot. So tell me a little bit about how technology is impacting the way that your teams are interacting with events, or even changing how you view them. And we'll go to Steven first.
Yeah. We've embraced technology, specifically AI, and just looking at ways we can creatively apply those. I think one of our most creative applications that I really love is one year we created a stage. It was called the Black Box Stage. It was our first experiment. AI was just coming onto the scene, and so we put an AI in a little black box, and we kind of just kept it hidden for a little bit and expanded that. It glowed when she interacted with people. It's called Ayana, whose name means everlasting bloom. And then the next year, we brought it to life by building in some plants and around it, and explored some creative applications around that, some AI-generated art that we worked with an AI artist as well, so it had that human touch, that human element. We always want to keep that. And then last year, it expanded to our emergent stage. So Ayana just came out of her box almost and was our stage co-host, and interacted and kind of hosted the stage and interacted with the panelists as well. That was very exciting. And then, of course, we had flowers and blooms coming out of that as well, embracing the greenery and the life and the nature side of things as well. And so we're just always constantly exploring areas like that. We're piloting some very exciting technology. At our Europe show this year, we piloted to a small group of users around creating a AI-assisted agenda, as well as getting around the show assisted meetings as well. We'll have another small pilot coming up in the US, and then expanding it, opening up to everyone in 2027. So we're always looking at ways how can we take the technology that currently exists and be creative with it, have fun with it, go another step. Yeah. One of our mantras, I guess, is what's the next layer? My manager always challenges us, everybody on the creative team, always like, okay, that's great, but how can you take it a step further? Because if you're going with just one idea and you're comfortable with it, how can you make yourself uncomfortable with it and explore those solutions? And I think that's the key there for our creative team as well. Everything we do, what's the next step? How can you go 2 levels deeper than that? And that's what will set you apart.
I think that technology can help with both the creative things, and Steven's phenomenally more creative than, I'm the least creative marketer on the planet, but I think creating those like memorable moments that you mentioned earlier. We did our CEO was a hologram for an event once, and we have a robot bartender coming up, and thankfully I have much more creative colleagues. So I think it's like, what's that memorable thing that you can use technology for? But then I think there's a other piece of it, which is the efficiency piece and the quality piece. So I think about, you've all been to events where the lead capture is happening digitally, and it's a little bit of an experience. So people not get tricked into giving you their information, but it just makes it fun. I've seen it where it's a bit of a bingo game. People have to scan their badge at all the booths, and then they get a prize or something. So creating both the memorable piece, but then also the efficiencies of, we want to make sure that we have this lead capture. And then I think technologies like Goldcast and other places where you can be really efficient. Ted mentioned sometimes you have limited time with a professional, whether it's like an executive or a portfolio manager, and it's like you're asking them for an hour of their time or hour and a half of their time on a webinar. How do you take that great content and make sure you can get social clips, video clips, audio clips, follow-up information really, really easily and effective to extend out. So it's like both creative and then the efficiency piece of it.
have one other example to just say. So we have a client is a publicly traded commercial bank, and on the most recent earnings call, the CEO used an AI clone to read his script on the earnings call. And he then came on afterwards and announced that that was actually not him, it was his AI clone, which created a lot of buzz, especially in sort of like the conservative commercial banking space. But he did it, he's a big believer in AI, but he also did it because the following day they were announcing a multi-year partnership with OpenAI. And so he did it as a precursor to that, to kind of draw attention that he was a forward-thinking CEO that was embracing the technology, and then leading into the announcement the following day. So I don't recommend that for everyone, but it definitely worked for them, and was a very interesting use of the technology.
That's fascinating. That does sound a little risky. Like that's
Yeah,
definitely...
there were some questions afterwards
Oh, no
how
doubt.
that worked, but we prepared going in. We knew exactly
knew the
what the
risks.
naysayers were going to say. We knew the risk, and he embraced it.
I was gonna say, it sounds like there was some good upside too, though, for some earned media and some buzz, which was very useful to them.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. I love that. So we're gonna go back to ROI, because I think we can never talk about ROI enough, but events can be very expensive, right? They can be labor intensive, they can cost a lot. You know, that robot bartender's not free. But when we're thinking about ROI around events, and wanting to be able to make the case, not just that it was worth it, but that it was wildly successful, you know, what are some of the metrics that you're looking at with your leadership? And I'm interested, Stephen, if you have a comment, but this one's probably mostly for Jackie and Ted, is my guess. Jackie.
Yeah, sure. I think for us, we're looking at audience. So what is the possibility, the market share of that audience? And I think that's a good determination when you're thinking about the types of events too, particularly the third-party event, where what's the access that you'll get to previous events and their audiences? What kind of data analytics can you run on that? And then making sure that you'll have access to that information post-event as well, so that you can, similar to what we were talking about earlier in terms of dashboard, how can you track ongoing sales? So it's definitely the audience, and it's for us, I think it's the cost of the event, it's the cost of the people, it's really the full package. And then from an expectation standpoint, what are the sales that might come in? And it's not necessarily always ticket sales that are coming in on more of like a retail standpoint, but also what's the influence perhaps as well. That might be a little bit harder to track, but I think that's where coming together as an internal team and sharing ideas and follow up and the plan to move forward is really important. For example, there's an event that we've kind of questioned for a while, a third-party event. Is it worth it? Is it not? And a key piece of feedback that's been really, really helpful for us to continue to be a part of it is our home office team, and how important it is for them to be in a captive space for 3 days with people who it would probably cost, you know, tens of thousands of dollars for them to fly and go see on a regular basis. So it's how do you quantify actually the influence in the room as well? Mm-hmm. Tickets, of course, you know, that's easy to track, but the influence piece as well. So I think it's audience, the market share, what's the data you're going to get from the provider, what's the anticipated influence, and then afterwards, what are the sales that are coming out of it? I think another anecdotal one, which I'd love to continue to figure out a way for us as an industry to track, is as we get focused, at least our firm, on the really key premier third-party events, how are we tracking that as well? Like we mentioned future-proof as well. That's one that we've really galvanized around, and we'll continue, I think, in the coming years to do more at, just because that's a core audience for us in the US that we really want to make sure that we're in front of. But it's just sharing ideas back and forth is really important, so we can kind of say, hey, what was your experience? I haven't done this. You know, this networking and peers, another place where we can really make sure we have a really clear goal in mind and ROI in mind even before we get into it.
Absolutely. Well, and it sounds like technology is also playing a really important and maybe increasing role in being able to figure out that ROI and track it back. What about you, Ted?
Yeah, just to build on that, I mean, we sort of look at event over event statistics and data. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's one thing to look at the data from a event, and that's important, but what are you doing to address some of the gaps and weaknesses in that data for the next event. And did we improve upon that or not? To sort of measure, did the changes work? Did the changes actually have impact? So trying to look at this not, as an event in isolation, but how does it build to the next event and to the next event? Because a lot of these audiences that our clients are going to are going from event to event. So it's similar audiences that are seeing the brand, hearing from the spokespeople, attending and participating in the events that they're doing at these events. So are we improving? Do we see steady improvement over time or not? And that's a big way that I think our clients sell in the ROI, especially up to the C-suite.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Stephen, for you, this question is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because for you, the event is the product, right? The thing that people are buying is coming to Money 2020. So how do you measure success? What does a successful Money 2020 look like to you?
Yeah, obviously our customer success is our success, right? We wouldn't have a show without them, without the success stories. NPS plays a huge part, and we are obsessed over our NPS and read every customer feedback. We take that very seriously. But this, in terms of, you said events are very expensive. They are indeed, especially in Vegas. If you've ever had experience building events in Vegas, they are double the cost of everything, sometimes triple. It is wild. But everything that we do, I think, finding that way to track how it's used, data specifically. I think in terms of merch is a huge part of our show floor and part of our customer experience. This is just a fun little thing as the creative on the panel here. But we used to hand out physical coins to everyone, and we just pass them out if they interacted with the stage or interacted at key points across the show floor, and they could redeem that coin for any piece of merch at our merch store. But there's no way to really see who's using it. Is it worth the investment? Are people actually enjoying this? So we introduced this year our digital merch coin. Of course, when was the last time you used a physical coin anyways? So a way to digitally collect coins around the show floor, encourage that interaction piece, that participation that goes back into our framework, and collecting those coins, and then also seeing the data of like how people are using it. Are they interacting with it? Are they finding it hard to discover? And just having that data on hand just makes us, able to look at the data and say, is this worth it? Is this worth the investment? How do we expand on it? How do we improve it?
Also, based on some of the topics and themes that are on your stages, like having a virtual currency makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It made sense. We were like, why are we still handing out physical coins?
Well, we're talking a lot about creating great events and getting the audience there. But I think, Jackie, you were the one who mentioned, this moment in time can escape us quickly, right? Like if you just let it be sort of this flash in the pan. So let's talk about extension. Let's talk about how we're using the tools and different platforms to make your events last. I mean, that's critical for the work that we're doing. I'm pretty sure it's critical for the work that you're all doing. So I'm curious to hear how each of you is doing that.
You want to go? You had a good answer before.
It goes back a bit to what Jackie was mentioning before. So we look at it as sort of like before, during, after, right? From a content strategy standpoint. What are we going to create before to help promote the event and leverage the fact that we are investing in and attending a specific event, whether it's a third-party event or our client's own event, own branded event. Obviously, on site, we want to capture what's going on at the event for those who are not at the event. So how can we extend beyond the attendees who are actually sitting either in the seats at the physical event or attending online, so that we can leverage that. And then coming out of it, how do we capture what we learned at the event and repackage everything that happened at the event for post-content production? And there we look, for really all before, during, and after, we're looking at multi-channel execution, right? Where can we reach the same audience that's sitting at that event elsewhere in a way that hopefully will engage them to the same extent as the ones who are actually attending? So everything's before, during, and after, and I think it's part of like the ROI, it's part of leveraging the investment in the event to get the most mileage out of it. So again, trying to make sure that the brand doesn't see the event in isolation, but that it's part of a bigger marketing campaign around a topic or issue that's really important to the audiences they're trying to reach.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's an important point too. If you think about events, particularly a virtual event where you have like one singular topic that you're trying to get across, and perhaps it's related to like a value add program, and thinking about that virtual touch point as just one modular piece of that overall program and making sure that it's rhyming with some of the other things. I do think that this is where a partnership, if you think about a third party conference or even like a hosted event too, this is where a really tight collaborative partnership with PR is so vital as well. So what happened at that event that we might want to amplify, or was there a speaker that we had there that we want to make sure that we're capturing some content on site and getting some extra use out of? And then I also, my last point on this too, regardless of the type of event, I think this is where making sure the clear goal is really important. Like, what is actually the call to action? What is the point of us doing this? And then being very clear with our whole distribution team, what their role in this afterwards is, and exactly what the next best action would be, and making it as foolproof as possible. Making that lead super available to them, the content that we want them to follow up with, or vice versa. So I think being super clear up front about what you're actually trying to accomplish, then giving the tools to everyone to follow up effectively.
Absolutely.
I agree. Like, without a plan, like, what's the point? I mean, for our marketing team specifically, it's like the Super Bowl or for our marketing team for content, gathering testimonials, content across the show floor, video. But if you're still seeing Knicks championship stuff in December, it kind of gets old pretty fast. Same with World Cup. You start seeing the same things over and over. So what is your plan on going into? It's a lot of upfront work. Our marketing team works super hard on planning out how are we going to use this? What's our creative approach to each one of these? What are the campaigns that extend not just in this moment, but several months out, and how it's going to be used, I think is super key.
For the record, I'm fine seeing Nick stuff for one year. It's been 50 plus years. Let us have our moment.
Fair.
Ty wants to keep going. I should mention in this context that actually our friends from Asset TV who are here, you can see their cameras set up in the back. They have helped us to extend not just this event, which this way many of our members are going to get to see this content, but some of our summits and things like that. So they help us a lot in that regard. So thank you, Asset TV team. We were going to do audience questions, but I'm going to skip straight to our lightning round here, which is because I really liked this final question. I want to know. So, you all spend a lot of time thinking about designing events, but tell me about an event, whether it was one that you produced, one that you attended, anything that really stood out and changed your view of how an event could or should be run.
I can go.
You can go first, yeah.
Okay, this was going back to, I think it was 2021. It was at the height of COVID, and I was asked to co-chair an event for an industry organization called Page Up, which is primarily for senior level communications professionals. And it's always in person, it's a different location every year. And at first I didn't really think about it. I said, sure, I was at home working like everyone, and I was like, I'll co-chair this. And they're like, well, it's totally virtual. We've never done a virtual event before. We have no idea how to do it. So I was like, maybe I should have thought about this before I said yes. But we dove in and we planned the event, and we really try to think hard about putting ourselves in the audience's shoes. They're at home all day. They're attending via computer. This type of all digital or all virtual event concept was fairly new. It's not a webinar. It's like a day and a half long event. And so what we ended up doing was bringing in a lot of outside speakers that we probably normally, if it weren't COVID and it weren't virtual, we never would have gotten access to. Very high level engaging speakers that came in and did it, and it made it a huge success. It was just a massive learning experience for me, and I think for the entire organization. And afterwards, now they have physical events, and now they've actually adopted virtual events moving forward from that based on the success of it.
Cool. I know I've mentioned it a couple times, and I promise they're not paying me, but Future Proof. I admittedly, before I went to my first Future Proof, which was fall of 2020, 4 or 5, I forget. I had a bit of a negative view on large industry conferences. I just felt, I actually was kind of hoping COVID would have killed them, and when they didn't, I was like, we have to keep doing this. And it just felt a lot like a check the box, and sort of every single one you went to is the same exact thing. And when I went to Future Proof, I was like, oh wow, we actually don't have to do this the same way. We don't have to take ourselves so seriously. We can be casual, it can be fun. But one of the things that really struck with me there was the expectation of the attendee. You know, I think in a lot of traditional conferences, it's just kind of like a free-for-all, and, you know, whoever comes, great, get a squishy ball at the booth and move on. But the way that they hold their audience accountable to committing to a certain amount of one-on-one meetings, and just the focus on direct networking, to me felt like it was really, really easy to see the value that this played, while also still having fun and kind of turning on its head this idea of like a large industry conference not having to be like a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely. What about you, Stephen?
Yeah, I would say for me as was C2 in Montreal.
Okay.
I don't think they're having one this year, unfortunately, but I went there in 2018, and it really transformed my view of conferences. And it was created by Sidley in Cirque du Soleil. And so just the whole experience from the moment you arrived to interaction, and it really precipitated what we did with our show. They came in, I think a couple years later after the pandemic, when everybody was really at a crossroads of like, okay, what do we do? Do we keep doing things the way we've always done it, or do we go in a new direction? And so Sidley came on board and kind of helped us reimagine our show floor. We went from having a grid. Grids are easy for a trade show. It's easy for the event organizers, not so great for the audience. And we went with a circular path. We were like, how do we change this up which kind of is more natural human wondering, and allows for that discovery, those serendipitous moments with each other, bumping into someone you may not have planned to bump into, and having those moments of connection. But yeah, C2 for me really opened my eyes to what was possible with the show, and being creative and just kind of doing some fun things that are out of the ordinary.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so appreciative. I feel like we've had some really good conversations around, audience, and how you're building for your audience and remaining focused there, how you're taking your events and extending them and making the life of them kind of well beyond the moment itself, and then how you are creating those memorable moments, right? Creating something that does stand out and is really special. So I really appreciate you all being here to talk about that today.